I'll say that up until this point, the American government has failed us, but the American people haven't. So I feel American today.
Yes, and the Department of the Army, General so-and-so, who is this?
Secretary of the Army made the announcement to our chairman today, just a few minutes ago, that they denied the easement to Dakota Access Pipeline.
Everybody, this truly was a historic moment. After months of fights, dozens, perhaps hundreds of people being arrested and bearing through all of this in freezing cold weather, many thought this pipeline protest was an exercise in futility. But the Obama administration's Army Corps of Engineers decided enough was enough, and they just said the Dakota Access Pipeline would have to be built someplace else. In a battle of Native Americans and environmental activists against a multi-billion-dollar energy company, it was the little guys who've triumphed. The suffering has finally paid off for the hundreds of people who've camped out and physically blocked construction of an oil pipeline in rural North Dakota. Sunday, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers announced they will now deny the pipeline's continued construction over controversial lands and recommend an alternate route be found.
It feels good. I'm really happy that I'm here to witness it and be on this land and celebrate with a lot of my elders and the youth.
The pipeline was being built to carry millions of barrels of oil near lands belonging to the Standing Rock Sioux Indians and would run under an essential river the community uses for drinking water. The protests were growing in size and intensity. Some 2,000 military veterans joined the pipeline protesters recently to add to their numbers and support. Today, protesters are celebrating, but not letting their guard down.
I think that we also need to keep in mind that we need to be ready to keep going.
The proposed $3.8 billion pipeline will stretch 1,200 miles when completed. Now, it may have to stretch a few more miles to find a way around these controversial lands.
People have said that now this is either we make it or break it, and I guess we made it.
Billboards in Bedford County are causing quite a bit of controversy, sponsored by American atheists. Both are suggesting you skip church on Christmas Day.
If you're not looking closely, you may miss it. In Bedford County, 2 new signs have a powerful message.
We want people to know that there are atheists in their community. We want it to be clear that atheists are your friends, your family, your loved ones.
The signs are both on 460 East. One in the Thaxton area that reads, "Make Christmas Great Again, Skip Church." The other, near the Botetourt County line, is a conversation between 2 teens.
We want to go where you maybe don't hear from atheists a whole lot, where the assumption too often is made that everybody believes the same thing.
So I went out and talked to people in Bedford to get their reaction. There's 2 new signs that are being placed in the area, and I'm going to show them to you, and I want you to give me your reaction.
Okay.
It says, "Make Christmas Great Again, Skip Church, American Atheist."
I don't really know what to say to that. I wouldn't skip church. Skip church? No way.
They had very strong opinions, to say the least.
Disrespectful to not go to church on Christmas. I don't like it.
But Fish says the signs are geared more towards eliminating the stigma of atheism.
There's millions of us out there. We're still just as compassionate around the holidays, that we want to do the exact same things.
A lawyer from California filed a lawsuit in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Ohio requesting that the U.S. government stop printing "In God We Trust" on its currency. In the document, attorneys Michael Newdow and Thomas Horowitz argue that keeping the phrase on currency violates the First Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, and the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Defendants listed in the suit include Bureau of Engraving and Printing Director Leonard R. Oliar, Treasury Secretary Jacob J. Lew, and Congress. Newdow, who is an atheist, has also been seeking to remove "under God" from the Pledge of Allegiance.
Now, the U.S. President-elect Donald Trump is continuing on with a series of phone calls with world leaders, and this time with the Taiwanese president. It's the first contact between a president-elect or president and a Taiwanese leader since 1979, when then-President Jimmy Carter adopted the One China policy and severed diplomatic ties with Taipei. The Taiwanese president had reportedly sent a congratulatory message to the president-elect Trump, and the two discussed issues like the economy and defense. But the phone call has infuriated the Chinese, who view Taiwan as a renegade province. Describing the phone call as a petty trick and an action put up by Taiwan, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said the exchange between the two will never change the One China consensus reached in the international community, and that sticking to the principle is the cornerstone of the healthy development of Sino-U.S. ties.
Tonight, the vice president-elect insists people are making too much of Donald Trump's decision to ignore 4 decades of U.S. diplomatic protocol and talk with his Taiwanese counterpart.
It's a little mystifying to me that President Obama can reach out to a murdering dictator in Cuba in the last year and be hailed as a hero for doing it. And President-elect Donald Trump takes a courtesy call from a democratically elected leader in Taiwan, and it's become something of a controversy.
High on Trump's agenda, the issue of protecting American jobs, even if that means interfering in the free market, to the horror of some fiscal conservatives. Today on Twitter, Trump went on a rant, warning companies against making what he called an expensive mistake. Any business that leaves this country for another country, fires its employees, builds a new factory or plant in another country, and then thinks it will sell its products back into the U.S., there will be a tax on our soon-to-be strong border of 35% for these companies. Today, Trump also took aim at another pet peeve.
I just retweeted the best tweet. I mean, wow, what a great, smart tweet.
Alec Baldwin's parody on SNL. Just tried watching Saturday Night Live. Unwatchable. And the Baldwin impersonation just can't get any worse. Sad. Baldwin tweeted back sharply, "Release your tax returns and I'll stop." Tonight, Trump is also getting a vote of confidence from Vladimir Putin. In a new interview, Putin calls him a smart person and predicts he'll quickly grasp he has a totally different level of responsibilities now.
Now, following the latest UN Security Council resolution on North Korea, the regime seems to be ratcheting up its military threats. The North State-run Korean Central News Agency reported Sunday that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un oversaw an air combat training competition. This marks the 9th military-related appearance by Kim in the past month. After observing the event, Kim reportedly emphasized that the squadron should train hard to be ready to raise the enemy to the ground once they are ordered to do so.
Stronger sanctions on North Korea followed by new provocations by the regime. That is the pattern pointed out by Scott Snyder of the Council on Foreign Relations, or CFR. According to a report by the researcher of the U.S. think tank, China may be the X factor contributing to this cycle, while Beijing gives its hope the latest international effort will be fruitful by displaying its willingness to cooperate and bringing in tougher sanctions on its longtime ally. It leaves sufficient loopholes, however. Snyder projects that it becomes clear even after the passage of each UN Security Council resolution imposing tougher sanctions on the North. When China eases off on the pressure, the cycle repeats itself and the reclusive regime conducts yet another nuclear or missile test.
Amid tense relations between China and South Korea, an American ally, tensions between Washington and Beijing are heating up as well. RT's Afshin Ratansi discussed this with an award-winning journalist and filmmaker, John Pilger, while talking about his new film, The Coming War on China.
There are 400 U.S. bases encircling China. They start in Australia, they go through the Pacific, they go up through Japan, Korea, across Eurasia. It's like a giant noose around China. Missiles, warships, low-draft warships, which can approach China just outside Chinese waters. The provocation of China that has gone on in the last 5-6 years has been extreme. It is extraordinary. It's not only a blockade, it's a blackout. The news, the perception that we're given, we're not allowed to know these important and very disturbing events. But another blackout has been on the biggest military exercise in living memory, and that was Operation Talisman Sabre, which the US last year, 2015, the US led, and in which they rehearsed the blockade of the Straits of Malacca, through which come 80% of China's oil, its resources, its much of its trade, and so on. So this constant provocation is really what that rather innocuous term, pivot to Asia, that Obama announced in 2011 really means.
According to the United Nations, 500,000 residents of Mosul no longer have access to running water. UNICEF recently released a statement that announced one of the 3 major water pipelines has been damaged as Iraq forces continue to battle the Islamic State. The damaged pipeline resides within portions of the city controlled by militants, making access to the site impossible. Officials and witnesses in the northern city added the militant group has intentionally cut off water supplies to neighborhoods near the front line. One official added that they have also cut electricity to several neighborhoods where Iraqi troops are advancing.
Russia says it has killed an ISIL leader along with 4 other militants in a raid on a stronghold near the southern city of Makhachkala. A large cache of weapons was reportedly discovered in the hideout.
It is the most watched, most played sport in the world. But in the UK at least, it would appear that the beautiful game has been a haven for sexual predators.
Lifting the lid on what could be one of the worst pedophilia scandals in Britain. 16 police forces are investigating some 350 reports of sexual abuse at the hands of youth football coaches. Newly appointed England manager Gareth Southgate called the stories heartbreaking.
You know, I played with one of the players who's recently come forward, and the reality of that, as they have said, is that they haven't felt able to speak about that until this moment, and that's completely understandable. I think the world was very different 20 years ago. It is important we acknowledge that and learn from it.
The scandal was blown open when lower division footballer Andy Woodward revealed he was sexually abused from the age of 11 at Crewe Alexandra Football Club by his coach Barry Bennell. His revelations prompted more than 20 other former professional players to come forward and sparked allegations of a cover-up by clubs. Football Association boss Martin Glenn promised to launch an internal review and punish any club found guilty of silencing abuse claims. 62-year-old Bennell has already served 3 jail sentences for child sex offences. He'll appear in court on December 14th.
Voters went to the polls today in 2 European countries. In Austria, a far-right presidential candidate was on the ballot. In Italy, voters considered a package of reforms that could lead to their prime minister's resignation.
The former leader of Austria's Green Party, Alexander Van der Bellen, has won the country's presidential election, defeating his far-right Freedom Party rival Norbert Hofer.
Van der Bellen beat right-wing rival Norbert Hofer of the Freedom Party, who wanted to roll back the power of the European Union, toughen border controls and crack down on the flow of migrants to Europe. The 45-year-old congratulated Van der Bellen on his victory in a Facebook post and called on all Austrians to stick together and work together.
You have to know that in a democracy, the voter is always right. So it's okay for me.
The post of Austrian president is largely ceremonial, but notched a rare victory for supporters of European integration and liberal internationalism.
The Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi has announced his decision to resign following a heavy loss in his referendum on constitutional reform.
Tomorrow afternoon, I will call a cabinet meeting, and I will thank my colleagues for an extraordinary adventure. It has been a united, strong, and compact team. I will then go to the presidential palace, where I will tender my resignation to the president.
Italians voted in the referendum on whether or not the country should amend its 1948 constitution. However, local media showed no votes were at 59% and votes in favor were at 41%. Renzi said the vote turnout exceeded all expectations. His departure will likely plunge Italy into a new phase of political uncertainty and possible economic turmoil. The defeat is also believed to pave the way for the fast development of populism in the country.
Spain's southern coastline has taken on a lot of rain. It definitely looks really bad in a lot of spots, as you can see. Government officials are saying this is the worst rain in 30 years. And basically what they've seen is the equivalent of a month's worth of rain in just one weekend. As a result, there's been the death of one young woman who was trapped by rising water. There have been people rescues, people literally clinging to rooftops for their lives, animal rescues, people having to abandon their cars because they could see that the water was getting too high and they needed to get to higher ground.
For Palatka police officer Mike Meredith, November 27th was a normal day, but his second encounter with Corey Daniels was far from ordinary.
It's not all chasing bad guys, it's just getting engaged with your community.
Those shoes about worn, ain't they? Yeah.
I noticed his toes were sticking out of his shoe. My sergeant actually said his toes are hanging out of his shoe. They've been worn so much there was literally no writing. So I held it up to my shoe and I'm like, well, I wear a 12, so he's probably 10 and a half.
Officer Meredith's body camera captures what happens next. He walks into Payless and buys a new pair of sneakers for Daniels.
Try this on.
80% of our calls are not pulling guns out and trying to shoot people. We're trying to make relationships with our community.
Officer Meredith says being a police officer isn't always like what we see on TV. When he steps foot outside of his patrol car, it's likely he's doing it to help someone in need.
When we turn our video on for every call we go to now with our new body cams, when I walked off, I had a couple extra polo shirts that I was going to get rid of in my trunk, so I gave him a Under Armour polo too, because he's been wearing the same clothes every day I've seen him for the last couple weeks.
A pair of sneakers may not mean much to the most of us, but those made a difference in someone's life, and Officer Meredith has a message he wants us to think about.
A scripture, John 15:12. So I'd say read that. And it talks about Jesus telling everybody to love one another as I've loved you.
Enjoy them new kicks. Merry Christmas to you.